After safely returning to the hamlet with Karuna, our heroes spent a few days strategizing on how to confront the growing undead threat. It was clear to everyone that if the undead were to attack, their small hamlet would not stand a chance against their overwhelming numbers. In order to maintain morale, Zervos ordered the builders of Arcalvia to start constructing defensive structures within the innermost part of the hamlet, where the villagers could seek refuge in case of an attack. But deep down, Zervos knew that this undertaking was futile, for the hamlet lacked experienced soldiers that could utilize such defensive structures. 2 weeks had passed, but the undead attack never came. Instead, a group of mercenaries arrived at the hamlet. They introduced themselves as members of the Voidbreaker Guild, operating from Geldush, a nearby independent settlement. Surprisingly, Michael had not encountered any members of this outlawed guild during his brief stay in Geldush before he came to Eldehar. The Voidbreakers revealed that Geldush had become a gathering place for warriors from different factions and kingdoms, united in their mission to eliminate the undead threat. In exchange for the aid of our brave adventurers, the Voidbreakers promised to provide shelter to the local villagers within the larger settlement of Geldush. Freya, Michael, and Zervos, accompanied by Karuna, made the decision to join forces with the Voidbreakers, while Pimpim, Skardoon, and Ghost chose to remain behind and prepare the villagers for their journey to Geldush, the home of the Voidbreakers. After traveling north for several days, the Voidbreakers, accompanied by our brave adventurers, suddenly veered off towards the west. It was clear that their leader possessed intimate knowledge of the nearby undead forces and their plans. Despite being an outlawed adventuring guild, the Voidbreakers were equipped with advanced gear, contradicting their apparent banishment from the civilized kingdoms. During their travels, our heroes befriended 2 enigmatic figures, Finron of Arcalvia and Garn, a mysterious dragonkin who were not members of the Voidbreakers, but followed them for their own reasons. Zervos eventually confided in his companions about the Archmage's edict, and was surprised to learn that the Voidbreaker leader was also aware of this powerful artifact. A few days later, the group caught up with a large undead horde, just as the Voidbreaker leader had predicted. While the Voidbreakers engaged the main force, our heroes flanked the undead. It became evident that the undead were disorganized and lacked a powerful leader. Our heroes easily defeated them in battle. Following the fight, the group traveled northwest for a few days more, when the Voidbreaker leader informed our heroes that he and a few others would have to split off and travel to a different location. After parting ways with the Voidbreaker leader, our brave heroes were guided westward by another member of the Voidbreakers. After 2 days, they arrived at the makeshift outpost, still in the process of being built. There, they met the outpost's quartermaster, Elish, who provided them with potions and basic gear before putting them to work. Some of our heroes were assigned guard duties, while others helped fortify the defenses. After 2 days, the dwarves of Hadrimar arrived at the outpost bearing equipment and regards from their king. Elish gave some of the gear that the dwarves brought to our brave adventurers. Our heroes carried out their duties for a week and a half without issue. However, hunters from the outpost brought news that remnants of an orcish horde were headed their way. In the hopes of persuading the orcs to join forces against the undead, our brave heroes volunteered to approach them and attempt diplomacy. Upon reaching the orcs, it became clear that they were from the Axe-Smasher horde, Karuna's former clan. Karuna wanted nothing to do with her former kin, denouncing them as animals and urging our heroes to annihilate them. Rather than face the orcs alone, our heroes retreated and joined forces with the Voidbreakers. Together with the quartermaster, our heroes devised an unconventional plan of defense. While the Voidbreakers held off the attack, they would take out the orcish leader. Finron cast a spell of invisibility on himself and the rest of the group, allowing them to execute their plan undetected. The plan was a resounding success. Not only did our heroes defeat the orc leader, but the attack was so brutal that Garn instilled fear in the remaining orcs and took over as their leader. He commanded their obedience, and the terrified orcs submitted to his will, having witnessed how he slaughtered their former leader, drank his blood, and ripped his head from his body. With the addition of the orcs, building of the outpost defenses was progressing much faster. After another week, the long-awaited day finally arrived. Our heroes knew that the undead would eventually attack, and now they had. Seeing the success of their unorthodox strategy with the orcs, Quartermaster Elish proposed a similar approach for the undead. If they could take out the undead leaders, the rest of the army would become disorganized and an easier target. Our heroes agreed, and Finron once again cast his invisibility spell on the group as they set out to confront the undead. Our heroes waited until the main force of the undead descended upon the outpost. They hoped to catch the undead off guard, like they did the orcs, but the undead leaders saw through their ruse, and instead charged at our heroes. Our brave heroes were outnumbered and facing insurmountable odds, but they refused to back down. The battle was brutal and hard-won. Michael was killed, but thanks to Garn's healing abilities, he was revived before it was too late. The rest of the group was left battered and stupefied by the sheer strength and power of the undead. While the others recovered, Finron ventured towards the outpost, returning with grave news. The main force of the undead was still under the control of other undead lords, and were on the verge of destroying the defenders of the outpost. Despite knowing that they were not ready to face the undead again, our brave heroes made the selfless decision to aid the Voidbreakers. They would defeat the undead, or die trying. Our heroes launched a surprise attack and relentlessly cut through the undead ranks, defeating the last undead lord before any proper response could be made. In the end, they emerged victorious, but at a great cost. Most of the Voidbreakers and soldiers belonging to the various civilized kingdoms that defended the outpost were slain. Quartermaster Elish, wounded in battle, was saved by our heroes and given time to recover. He then instructed our heroes to wait for the return of the Voidbreaker lieutenant, recognizing our heroes' crucial role in the elimination of the undead threat in this part of Avalon. The valiant deeds of our heroes earned them the respect of all that survived the undead onslaught. As a few more days passed, our heroes were approached by Elish once again, concerned about the lieutenant's delayed return. He implored them to investigate and find out what had happened. The location of the lieutenant's mission was then revealed: an undead fort 4 days away from their current position, where the Voidbreakers had launched an assault against a greater undead lord. Without hesitation, our brave heroes set out towards the fort, and on their journey they stumbled upon a remarkable sight: a narrow path, approximately 4 meters wide, cut through the tainted land. The path was somehow untouched by the taint. They followed this path, which led them to the undead fort. What they found there was a worrying sight: the bodies of many Voidbreakers and soldiers from other kingdoms, along with the remains of the defeated undead. It was evident that the Voidbreakers had achieved victory, but not without losses. From the ruins of the fort, a bluish light emanated, drawing the attention of our heroes. However, before they could reach it, they were ambushed by incorporeal undead under the command of a banshee. Despite the terrifying presence of the banshee and her wraiths, our heroes were undeterred in their pursuit. With their powerful spells, they vanquished the banshee and the rest of the undead in their way. Afterward, they approached the blue light to discover a reliquary made of wood, floating in the air and wrapped with a strange chain. A group of zombies stood around the light, but they were no match for our heroes. Before investigating the reliquary and the light that it produced, they ventured further into the ruined fort, where they came across an orc wearing unusual armor who was pierced by a blade of woe, a weapon of Death Knights. Beside him lay the remains of a defeated Death Knight, indicating a fierce struggle between the two. It seemed that the orc had emerged victorious, but succumbed to his injuries. With great care, our valiant heroes carried the blade of woe and the deceased orc, entering the blue light emanating from the reliquary. As they stepped into the light, a dwarf materialized before them. He introduced himself as Bolin, and gifted our heroes with his necklace, a chain resembling the one adorning the wooden reliquary. He instructed them to wrap this chain around the blade of woe, after first covering it with a cloth. Upon doing so, the souls of the brave warriors who had fallen to the undead in the fortress emerged, expressing their gratitude to our heroes. The spirit of the dead orc also appeared, granting Finron permission to wield his blade, forged from the same unusual metal as his armor, as long as he uses it to vanquish evil and protect the innocent. The dwarf then bestowed the reliquary upon our heroes, declaring it to be hope, or what little remained of it. He tasked them with delivering it to Geldush. Our heroes heeded the dwarf's instructions, but before venturing to Geldush, they returned to the Voidbreaker outpost and informed Elish of their discovery. Elish explained that he would salvage what he can from the fort and burn the bodies of the dead. He then expressed his gratitude to our heroes and told them to proceed to Geldush. After traveling for 2 weeks, our brave heroes finally reached Geldush. There, they met Finron's mentor Tharion, an elderly mage on the brink of death from the consequences of his Asrium binding ritual, a fate that awaited many of our heroes. However, Tharion's condition improved in the presence of the reliquary, and he eagerly took notes on it like a true scholar. Next, our heroes went to meet Kristoff, the leader of the Voidbreakers. They recounted to him the events that had transpired at the outpost and the undead fortress. They presented him with the body of the deceased orc, who Kristoff recognized as his friend Garn. Kristoff, acknowledging the brave deeds of our heroes, bestowed our party the Archmage's Edict, the legendary artifact that Zervos had been seeking. Though tempted to keep it, Zervos eventually heeded Kristoff's warning that the edict would only lead to his downfall, and returned it to him. While our heroes had initially planned to take the reliquary with them, they ultimately decided to leave it in the care of Tharion and Kristoff in Geldush. Tharion promised to safeguard it, all the while keeping notes of all the strange artifacts that our heroes brought with them. Freya then inquired about her friend Pimpim and the other inhabitants of Eldehar, asking if they had reached Geldush yet. Kristoff informed her that they had not, and urged our heroes to check on Pimpim and the state of Eldehar, as Pimpim should have arrived by now. Our heroes agreed, spending the night in Geldush to rest before setting out for Eldehar the following morning. Our heroes journeyed south along the river, their path clear and uneventful, until they found themselves midway between Geldush and Eldehar. It was then that they spotted a solitary cabin nestled in the wilderness, raising questions in their minds about who might inhabit such a remote place, especially with the threat of undead lurking nearby. As they approached the cabin with caution, everything seemed ordinary at first. However, Finron, sensing something was off, cast Dispel Magic, revealing unsettling phenomena that hinted at deeper troubles. In the backyard, they encountered a distraught man chopping wood, who suddenly began to search frantically for his wife and daughter, despite the fact that they appeared to be inside the cabin. Realizing that something is amiss, Finron cast another spell that allowed him to peer into the ethereal realm. What he saw was horrifying. A vision of the man being brutally murdered by grotesque creatures. Shaken by the sight, he urged his friends to leave the area. Kristoff briefly considered whether to perform the bless ritual on the surrounding area, but ultimately decided to heed Finron's warning and leave the cabin. Not long after their unsettling encounter at the cabin, our adventurers found themselves ambushed by a group of fey creatures, mostly centaurs and satyrs. Among the chaos, they spotted 3 cultists chanting ominously, one of whom clutched a peculiar artifact. The battle was fierce, as the heavily armored satyrs and the precise archery of the centaurs posed a significant challenge. Then, suddenly, things changed after Freya unleashed a well-aimed arrow that struck down the cultist with the strange item. In an instant, a surge of otherworldly energy erupted from the fallen cultist's artifact, causing the bodies of his companions to explode. Strange energy was released from the artifact, and it swept over the remaining Fae and the heroes, transporting them into another realm. Our heroes ended up scattered across this bizarre and fractured realm, each surrounded by multiple Fae creatures. The very ground beneath their feet seemed to conspire against them, shifting and trebling as they attempted to traverse the treacherous landscape. While fighting the Fae, at one point, Finron recklessly charged headlong at 2 satyrs perched on a narrow ledge, hoping to vanquish them swiftly. However, he failed to kill the satyrs, and before he could react, the satyrs seized him, hurling him into the abyss below. Zervos, witnessing his friend's peril, leaped to save him, but was instead dragged down by the weight of Finron and his gear, plunging into the void alongside him. Meanwhile, our remaining heroes quickly dispatched the other Fae creatures and started investigating the area where Finron and Zervos were last seen. To their amazement, they discovered that the 2 had landed on a small floating piece of land just 10 meters below. Although Finron had died from the fall, the rest of the group acted swiftly, employing rope and a touch of magic to hoist Zervos and the lifeless Finron back to safety, and revive Finron before it was too late. With renewed determination, our heroes pressed onwards, seeking an escape from this otherworldly realm while fending off relentless attacks from incorporeal Fae. Eventually, they stumbled upon a promising path that seemed to lead out of the realm, but first, they had to confront a Medusa, a powerful spellcaster, flanked by Fae wolves and more satyrs. Just as they braced for a fierce battle, an unexpected wave of calmness washed over our heroes, and the chaotic landscape that just moments ago worked against them had stilled. Our brave heroes felt power coursing through them and charged at the Medusa and her minions, emerging victorious. Behind the defeated foe lay 2 chests, and the mysterious orb resting on an ominous pedestal. Inside the chests they found 2 grotesque pulsating organs, which they decided to take with them. Finron then cast another spell which granted him visions of the realm's secrets. He saw the Fae bringing humanoids to this realm, including the peasant from the cabin and his family, and slaughtering them as a sacrifice in order to create the grotesque pulsating organs. He then saw cultists chanting and pouring blood from the strange organs onto the sphere on the pedestal, and opening rifts to the material realm by doing so. With this newfound knowledge, they opened the rift back to the material realm and took the mysterious orb with them. Upon their return, they hurried back to the cabin where Christoph performed the bless ritual and freed the innocent souls of the human peasant and his family. Satisfied that innocent souls were freed from unjust servitude, our brave heroes set their sights once more on reaching Eldehar, eager to uncover the mystery behind Pimpim's prolonged absence. After a week of travel, our heroes finally arrived at Eldehar, only to be met with an unexpected sight. The streets were teeming with soldiers from Arkalvia. Confusion and concern washed over the group as they pondered the implications of this military occupation.